So let's break this down a bit. The M1 came out. You did a review, which was great because it was a lot more nuanced than other reviews out there. There are some compatibility issues, but overall, the performance of this M1 is pretty mind-blowing. What does that signal for the Macs to come next year?
Yeah, so the M1 really was a good start, particularly with software that was optimized for it. So on a performance per watt and even on an overall performance basis, it did really well. And that's a good indication when you start adding cores to the CPU and to the GPU, the graphics subsystem, that it can scale in performance to do, I'll call them more workstation type of applications like raw video editing that's typically done on the CPU by professionals, or even visualization that goes into making movies, doing commercials, higher order types of use cases. So what I think it means is that we're likely to see these in much higher performance and higher priced Macs into the future.
Well, let's give investors a big picture look at the significance of this, because last week, Cloud Week, we saw AWS making chip announcements also. It seems like you've got these two situations where you've got vertically integrated platforms, one in the enterprise in AWS, one more in consumer with Apple, that are saying we can make the chips, we can customize hardware, we can then work on the software to tune it all nicely. It's like the mainframe era once again, except for the cloud, right? What does Intel, what does Qualcomm, what do these chip specialists have to do to continue to thrive?
Well, what they're going to have to do is they're going to have to step up their games, because what's happening, and this is particularly in the ARM ecosystem, it's easier to innovate because of the intellectual property that they can leverage to develop their own designs. And that's what this is about. And the tools have gotten so much easier. So the Qualcomms, the Intels, the NVIDIAs and AMDs are going to have to step up their game for sure. But John, this is great for the market. I just want to step back, because more competition always means more innovation and sometimes lower costs. And everybody in the ecosystem, based on what Apple and Amazon, AWS have been doing, are relooking at their roadmaps and charting out, what do I do differently in the next 3 to 5 years?
That's interesting. I guess for Intel's purposes, what do you think they have to do differently? And from a positioning or sentiment standpoint, isn't the bar awfully low right now for Intel to surprise to the upside?
Yeah, Intel, if you look at what they're trading at, I mean, it is a inexpensive stock. I think the pessimism has already been built in. And I have learned in 30 years of covering Intel, I competed with them. I used them as an OEM. You never count Intel out, okay? Their biggest challenge right now is the fab. When I compare what, let's say, Apple and Amazon's going to be on at 5 nanometer, and then I compare that to what Intel's going at, which is 10 nanometer, and I equivocate 7 from TSMC at 10, it is a bigger short-term challenge, I think, than a longer-term challenge. I know that Intel has some, what should be some very exciting silicon on their roadmap. Now it comes in 10 nanometers, so they have to deliver on that. But Intel has kind of been in a performance stasis for a while that it needs to get out of.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.